This is a follow-up to my last video, explaining the one-block momentum triple neo. Although not necessary, I'd recommend watching it as I will be referencing concepts from that video that apply here as well. That was a wall clip. It's something that almost every Minecraft parkour player has experienced at least once. Like most people, I brushed it off as being some kind of bug, probably to do with floating points, and kept going about my day. But hang on, wasn't the one-block momentum triple neo a floating point issue as well? That's absolutely correct. Both the 1BM triple and the wall clip require floating point imprecision resulting in a smaller hitbox than the game intends. The difference is they both reset the player's hitbox using separate methods. That's right, sneaking is not the only way to reset the hitbox, as any instance of teleportation also causes a hitbox reset. Now how is teleportation possible in vanilla Minecraft, and without any commands? I'll get to that in a bit, but first I'll explain why sneaking doesn't result in a wall clip, which I forgot to do in the last video. Theoretically, if you enlarge your hitbox by sneaking against a wall, it should cause a wall clip, right? Well, that would happen if we weren't technically inside of the block already, which we can verify here as we are unable to place these stone bricks. This is another bug that I've experienced multiple times, so it's nice to finally have the reason for it. Anyway, the game recognizes that under normal conditions, one where the player has the default hitbox size, that we would be inside of the wall, and in that state sneaking won't reset the player's hitbox. This is because of the intended usage of the lowered Y sneak hitbox. If a player's hitbox reset while inside of a small gap, it would cause some funky stepping glitches, allowing us to clip out of usually inaccessible ones, which we can see when directly teleporting into it. Interestingly, this mechanic can also prevent us from entering a normally accessible gap, as it believes us to already be in the block. Luckily, this didn't affect us during the triple neo, as we were outside of the block on the last air tick. Anyway, now that we've ruled out using sneaking to wall clip, we're only left with teleporting. This is scary, as teleporting isn't version dependent and can even be done in 1.8. Fortunately, there's only a few conditions that cause Minecraft to teleport the player independent of commands. These are moving further than 1 pixel inside of a block and moving wrongly. The first case doesn't help us wall clip at all, as it requires the player to already be inside of a block, which means we then have to look at the second case. But what does moving wrongly even mean? Well, first, we have to understand that for every tick, the player's movement is actually calculated twice, once by the client and once by the server. That may sound confusing, as wall clipping can occur in single player, but if you've ever paid attention when quitting a single player world, we can see that Minecraft still runs the internal server that calculates this movement. Knowing that, moving wrongly is what happens when the client's movement and the server's movement are different by a distance of 0.25 blocks on any given tick, which I believe was arbitrarily decided by the developers. Anyway, when this happens, the server invalidates the movement of the last tick and teleports the player back to the coordinates of the previous one, which appears to be exactly what is happening in the wall clip. That's great and all, but what causes the client and server's calculations to differ by such a large amount? Well, it's because the server's calculations are not a perfect replica of the client's. One example is when it incorrectly assigns the on-ground flag, causing the sneak blip, which is thoroughly explained in Cynimal's video here. However, the reasoning for the discrepancy during the wall clip is a little more obscure. If you remember from before, the reason why sneaking wasn't able to reset the hitbox was due to the player technically being inside the block. That's okay though, as there are many situations where a player may be inside of a block, whether it's due to a piston or other means. Thus, the problem arises not because of being in the block, but moving to the adjacent one, which is not intended behavior. This usually isn't possible, but is actually happening when running against the wall with a smaller hitbox. Even then, we still aren't wall clipping, and that's because we aren't travelling through the blocks at more than 0.25 blocks per tick, the amount required for the moving wrongly check. How about in this situation though? We clearly have enough speed to flag a move wrongly check, so why did it take that long to wall clip? It's because you have to pass the blockage of the next wall by at least 0.25 blocks. So I'll show it again with the coordinates on. Take for example this earlier block. Its Z blockage occurs at 16.7. For a wall clip to occur, I would have to move to at least 16.95 in one tick from a starting point below that first blockage of 16.7. In the clip though, I started at 16.597 and only moved to 16.877. Although I've moved 0.28 blocks in one tick, the server calculates this movement, sees that the player should hit the wall at 16.7, and tells the game that I should be moved to that blockage. However, checking between the two calculations yields a difference of only 0.177 blocks, going from 16.7 to 16.877. From there, the game sees that the distance is below 0.25 blocks, and lets the movement pass anyway. Finally, if we look at when the player does eventually wall clip, you can see that the movement was far enough through a blockage that the server invalidates it, going from Z19.684 to 19.964, for a difference of 0.264 blocks. This teleports us back to the location of the previous tick, and ultimately resets our hitbox back to the normal size, wall clipping us inside of the block and allowing us to climb the wall, as there is no ceiling above us. With all this, it's easy to see why people experienced more wall clips while being around 0 on the X and Z axes and also when having high speeds, as combining both of those allows them most opportunities to have a small hitbox and pass a blockage with that minimum speed of 0.25 blocks per tick. It's important to note for wall clipping that you can't be in creative mode, as that skips the server's movement validation, and also that the hitbox should be 0.18576 or below, for anything higher than that also will not wall clip. Anyway, although extremely dangerous, this glitch is really just a more convoluted form of relog glitching, so the easiest method to prevent it is to make maps with walls 3.5 blocks high, or otherwise have a layout that prevents climbing. If you've got any other questions about the mechanics of Minecraft parkour, I might make a video on them later, so feel free to ask in the comments.